Plan that. So. Well, thank you. We have a lot of stuff to go over, and we're going to be moving along pretty quick. I'll introduce our panel of questioners, or inquisitors, as Paul would like to say. Paul Clan from the Key West Citizen. He is the publisher. Jenna Stauffer from Channel 19, our local TV station. Richard Grusin from many years with Cruisin' with Grusin. He also teaches acting. And I think we've all seen or heard Bill Becker many, many times. Now the format tonight, we're not going to do introductions. We're going to get right to questions because we figure that the information will get out there anyway. And some of the people have done their introductions so many times it's just gotten rote. So we want to spice it up a little bit. We're going to also try to have each questioner ask an individual candidate a question as opposed to asking one question of each one and going down the line. Usually all the information gets out, and then again, it keeps it moving a little bit, keeps it going. One little housekeeping thing I wanted to do, and this is not to show favoritism in any way, but it's the first time we've had this. I'd like to wish happy birthday to Cheryl Cates. I hope that disclaimer keeps us out of trouble. So we're going to do, this is Keys Energy Board. We're going to do it for about 15 minutes, and then Mark will give me the high sign. We're trying to keep asking you guys to keep your questions or answers to about 1.5 minutes. And these guys are all professional questioners, so they're going to ask very quick, concise, direct questions. Let's just get right to it. So, well, I'll also introduce our candidates, I'm sorry. Tim Root, Cheryl Cates, and Vidal. They'll be able to tell you more about themselves as they answer their questions. So, let's start right out. Bill, you're up.
Okay, question for Vidal. You've been here long enough. Remember Hurricane Andrew back in '92, when the Keys were cut off from the mainland, no electrical supply down here. Keys Energy was able to supply a fair amount of backup locally. Up the Keys, the electric co-op was not. There was a big controversy over electricity back then. What would you do? Where would you side in terms of having to share our Keys Energy at the expense of not having enough electricity locally? How would you handle that?
Well,
Okay, we're on now. First of all, let me just say that my primary purpose in this is to be here for the person who pays their bill. And I will do everything in my effort to be able to back up assistance during hurricanes. So I will definitely back that up if we have to do that in times of emergency.
What do you know about the backup capability that Keys Energy has versus the electric co-op?
Right now, I do not know anything about it. And I'm not afraid to tell you that, but I'm eager to learn and I'm willing to learn. And when I sit down to make a decision, it won't be just my decision. It'll be something that I'll represent all the people.
I guess this is a question for everyone on, if you
You're
could.
not allowed to do that. So.
Oh, I'm not?
No, pick one of them.
But I was assured in our meetings.
Traveling, so
all right, I'm going to pick on Vidal again. And the only reason I'm doing that is because why are you running? Why do we need an elected utility board? And you've just admitted that you don't know anything.
I didn't say I didn't know anything. I just didn't know anything about the topic he asked me. The reason that I'm running is because I feel that we need someone to represent the normal person. I do not represent anything other than the actual person who is the ratepayer. And I think that we need somebody in there with a heart, and that's somebody that loves Key West and loves the people that can represent. Now, as each item comes up, they have to be researched. I'm sure that no one has gotten into the utility board knowing all the answers ahead of time.
So have you done your research about the technical aspects of what you're about to take over? What have you done to acquaint yourself to the problems and the things that we need to know that you will handle and protect us from?
Well, first of all, Keys Energy has a great board, not a great board, but they have a facility to handle all of that. The utility board will not handle that. They have professionals who do handle that. As my job is going to be a decision maker to represent the community.
Okay, this question is for Tim. Tim, what do you think of the relationship that Keys Energy has with its union?
We on? Yes. Well, obviously, Keys Energy and the union is the more of the field help, maintenance, and construction. I think it has been a little stressful over the years because of our current economic situation. It's getting a little bit better right now. But I believe that the union and the employees, I mean, we have some of the best maintenance construction linemen in the United States. I mean, they proved it through hurricanes and everything, and I believe that we need to keep their pay scales and watch their benefit packages, and I think that's our job as utility board members to listen to management and the union and try to be fair with both.
Paul? I don't want to miss out on Cheryl here. It's her birthday. I guess the question that I would ask you is mostly it's like, what insights or experiences do you bring that makes you think that you're better than the other two candidates?
Well, I just think being a member of the community for a long time, since I was growing up here, and having a business here for 20 years, and just always being out in the community, and I think I know the people's needs. And I think I could be a voice for the people on the board.
Question for Cheryl. Do you agree with the way the utility board handled the electrification of No Name Key? And what?
Yeah, I do. I believe that the people at No Name Key deserve electricity. Is that what you mean? Or would you like to expand on that question?
Well, but the polls went in before all the permits were in.
Well, I don't know the exact legalities of it, but I do agree that those people needed electricity. I'm not on the board yet. I didn't hear all the legalities of it, but yes, I do believe that they deserved it.
So you would have sided with the current board?
Yes.
Okay.
Cheryl, I'd like to ask you, what would you do on the board to promote green energy, more green energy in our community?
Well, I think Keys Energy is doing a good job right now with green energy. They're slowly turning, their trucks into hybrid trucks. They're giving away free trees when they can, and I think they do that once a year. And they have a program where customers can have solar energy, and I think it was like the first 75 customers that signed up for it would get a refund.
Would you advocate a rebate for people who are energy efficient and are using solar?
Oh, definitely. I think that they should get a rebate, and I think they already have a rebate for customers now that buy certain appliances.
All right, this question is for Vidal. Vidal, what do you feel should be the long-term goals of Keys Energy? Conservation, dealing with climate change, reducing consumer costs, or do you have others?
Well, my long-term goal to do that when I get in there is, number one, to always be in mind of the ratepayer. And that if we do anything to further, let's say, go green or anything, we have to be very careful of the cost that that's going to cause the ratepayer. So I'm always going to keep in mind the ratepayer and what's going on for the community, because I am out with the people and I know their needs. And I know that we have local, state, and government funding grants for Go Green, but we have to be very, very careful again of the cost. Is it going to cost the consumer anything, and do we have land to handle that?
I'll ask Mr. Root a question. Are there any changes or issues that you're aware of that's going on at Keys Energy that have motivated you to run for this office? And if there are, what would you propose as changes?
Well, a few things on my platform that I've sent out to people is a big issue, I think, with the public and the ratepayers is this issue with the credit card charges and electronic banking. I think we really have to look into it, because after researching it a little bit myself, when you look at the way that we set the credit card system up, we pay early, you pay on time, electronic banking, we get rid of a lot of paperwork. We also don't have the accounting burden on City Electric, or Keys Energy, excuse me, and I think, been here that long. I think that we need to really take a look at that. That's one of the big things. Another thing I believe is the next 4 years, the Navy is planning on lowering their carbon footprint about 25%. And it hasn't been brought up yet, but it's going to be. And they're one of our biggest revenue generators here, and it's to the tune of around $7 or $9 million. And there's got to be a big decision if that happens, where that money's going to come from for Keys Energy, and we certainly don't want it back in the ratepayers' lap. So that's a really tough decision, needs to be made down the road soon.
Vidal, Keys Energy is owned by the people of Key West. The people of Key West vote on who's on the utility board. Outside of Key West, they can't vote. But Keys Energy does supply electricity up the Keys, and in fact, it is more expensive because the homes are further apart. Do you think Lower Keys residents should pay more for electricity because it costs more to service them?
No, absolutely not. I think that they're doing a good job now. And the question that you asked about being up the Keys is a good one, because I've even had questions that I can't answer about why can't I vote for you if I pay my bill for Keys Energy and they're up the Keys. So these are questions that I'm going to have to roll my sleeves up and look into when I get in there. But I do not think the ratepayers should pay any more than they're paying now. Absolutely not.
Okay, I believe there is an agreement with the county for use of the right-of-way that raises the rates. Does anybody know anything about that? Any of the other candidates? Okay, pass the mic.
Yes, but you're looking out for the ratepayers, and as a ratepayer, I really appreciate that. But how do you balance that with the fact of keeping our energy cost-effective and also making money?
Well, I think that right now, Keys Energy is doing good. I think that they're doing a great job. And we need to tap into other sources if we're going to do projects that cost more money, to not cost the ratepayer more money.
And what sources?
There's a lot of grant money that we haven't even tapped into.
And what is that?
What is what?
The sources.
The sources is the grant money that we haven't tapped into. If we're going to do a project that's going to cost the consumer more money, then we have to investigate that. We have to try to find other ways that are vital that we can improve without really raising the rates.
Thank you.
This question is for Tim. Tim, Keys Energy employees are among the highest paid city employees in the county. So do you feel that Keys Energy employees' pay is in line with, or are they overpaid as compared to workers that are holding similar positions in the private sector?
You get the toughest questions on me, don't you? I have investigated when you look in the budget, I mean, 38% of Keys Energy budget is in benefit packages and salaries. And it is working now? Oh, yeah. Sorry, John. And there are some people in the union that have been there a long time, and they are making a very good wage. There's a lot of management that's been there a long time, and they're making a very good wage. It's been mentioned on the board here lately that they might think about the drop program, which takes some of the older seniority people out, but still gives them the opportunity when they get out to work some of the overtime and still be there to help train new people. That might be one way that we can adjust some of the salaries and wages. But again, I say that when you look at the overall of the state or anywhere else on the East Coast, when there's a problem and there's hurricanes, our people down here are so good at what they do. They send them where they need to be, they train people, and they do a very good job. And it's a very risky business out there.
Paul, last question.
Ms. Cates, I'll just ask you this. Do you have any idea how much the board is currently, the budget for the board is currently spending on annual travel and off-site meetings to places like Tallahassee and Washington, D.C.? And if you do you think it's in line with what should be spent?
Well, I have looked at the budget. I actually have a copy of it here, but I don't remember exactly those figures. But I don't think that they do a lot of traveling. Yeah, 45,000, Tim said. But anyways, I don't think they do a lot of traveling. I think they maybe do like 1 or 2 trips a year. I know 4. You need to ask him that question.
That wasn't my plan.
But anyways, I think that they don't do a lot of traveling, and I think they are in line with the budget. And not everybody goes anyway. A few of the board members go, and then, of course, Lynn goes, and that's it.
One final.
Yeah, we're going to do a bonus question.
One bonus
breaks the rules, because Bill's going to ask it of everybody. I also can say that Tim was down a question, but because he answered some of Cheryl's, that we're pretty good.
This is the only election that could go to a runoff, which means we could have an election in November with the top 2 vote getters if nobody gets 50% plus 1. Now, by a show of hands, would any of you be willing to concede the election if you came in a distant second but still was forced into a runoff? Would you concede the election and avoid the city's expense of a runoff? A raise of hands, would you or not?
I'm in it to win it.
Okay, well, that was our bonus question. Well, thank you, guys. Give these guys a hand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Like at hometown, the incumbent is Jimmy Weekly, and his challenger is Tom Malone. Let's just get right to it. Richard, you'll start off the question.
Tom, this is for you. There's been a lot of controversy back and forth, and I know in the mayoral race we'll be talking about that as the homeless. And many of the homeless are in your would be in that district, in your district. And it's a difficult question because homelessness is not against the law. What would be your solution to help reduce that problem in our city, or that challenge? I won't make it a problem. A challenge in our city.
There's no easy solution because in this country you can travel anywhere and live anywhere. And managing this issue is not going to be easy. When Mayor Cates came up with the idea of a 24/7 shelter, initially I was very much for it, but now I'm having second thoughts. I have a great deal of compassion for people who have fallen on hard times and who need a helping hand to rebuild their lives. Government is a service organization. Its job is to help people. But I'm also concerned about the destination homeless, those who come down here to just to be homeless, the vagrants. And frankly, I have little or no patience for them. It's the people who want to rebuild their lives that I have a great deal of compassion for, and I'd like to try and help. But that said, I don't think that we can do it alone. We need partners. We need the privates, we need the not-for-profits, we need the county, we need the sheriff, the hospital, and it's we can't do it alone, not by any means. We can provide the land and the building, and we can maintain both, but beyond that, we need help. We need partners.
Thank you. Jeff.
This is for Jimmy. How do we get something going at Truman Waterfront?
We are going to get something going at Truman Waterfront real soon. Matter of fact, at the commission meeting Tuesday night, there was a commitment that this spring, or next spring, 2014, in May, we will have groundbreaking and we'll begin the process of doing the infrastructure that needs to be done there, as well as some landscaping. I know it's been a long wait for everyone in this community. And it's been a very long wait for me as well, since I was, along with the previous city commission, we were able to obtain that land at no cost to the citizens of this community. And so now we have it. Now we have to perform. We have a plan in place, and now we just have to start going after the funding that we need and begin the process. in spring of 2014. We'll have that groundbreaking, and you'll see some activity going over there to finally get that park started. Unfortunately, it's going to probably take 5 or 6 years to complete, but at least before you have a completion date, you have to have a starting date.
Thank you, Jim. Paul?
Well, I guess I'll ask Commissioner Weekly a question. You've had a long career as an elected representative of Key West, whether you were as a mayor or city commissioner. And when you're looking back at it, what can you point to that would make us believe that you're more effective in bringing efficient government to Key West rather than just bigger and more?
I think there's a number of things. One, and you're right, I was very fortunate to be able to represent this community for 24 years. And it's a community that I love, and it's a community that I will always fight for the residents of this wonderful city. But, in answer to your question is that you have to bring people together. You have to have a vision for the community of what you want to see. And you have to be able to make adjustments to that as you move that vision forward. And there's a number of things that we were able to accomplish during that time that I'm quite proud of, that have benefited this community in a number of ways. One being the Key West Bite. It was under my leadership that we were able to purchase the Key West Bite, keep it out of the hands of the developer who wanted to put condos around there. We were able to do that. The citizens of Key West benefit from that today, as well as our visitors. It's become one of the most popular places for our visitors to go, as well as our residents. It's always about improving what we have and our quality of life. And that's what we've always attempted to do, and what I have always attempted to do.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Question for Tom. This is a repeat of the election 4 years ago. What do you think has changed in the 4 years that makes you think the result is going to be any different?
I don't know what the voters are thinking. They're in the process of voting now, early voting, absentee voting. Voters will go to the polls on the 1st. And about an hour after the polls close, we'll find out exactly what the voters are thinking. I'm running because I have things to say to the voters. There are issues that other candidates have not been talking about, that I wish to talk about. There have to be about a dozen issues that face this small city. And I'm emphasizing a few issues, although I'm concerned about all of them. Public safety is at the top of my list. And there are a number of components to that. Aside from public safety, there's the need to diversify the economy, and I'd like to see us lobby the Navy aggressively to have them, persuade them to expand their operations, have more military down here permanently, have more civilian jobs for locals. The sequester will not last forever. And then we have the issue of residential parking. And my solution differs from Jimmy's. I don't believe in restricting Old Town residential parking to Old Town residents. That will never pass the commission. The others are not going to allow their constituents to be discriminated against. My answer is that we need to redirect tourist parking to city parking lots and structures, and we need more structures, and then we need a shuttle system to transport them to and from their lodging.
Excuse me, Tom. I know you were the victim of the horrendous crime, and you went through the system here in Key West and working with the police department. It's been a long time and coming to an end, and I just wondered, as mayor, is there anything you would change about our police department, our patrols, anything like that? I guess Commissioner, sorry.
That's what he meant.
I have no issues with it took 4 years to resolve. But in any event, that's, when you're dealing with 5 attorneys and the changes of attorneys, and then you have all kinds of legal maneuvering, that happens. But in any event, I'm fully satisfied with the services I received by the Key West Police Department. and by the state attorney's office. It would have helped if we had surveillance cameras, because there were no witnesses, and I was and still am. Well, I was no help because I have no memory of what happened beyond a certain point. Between the time it began and the time I was in Miami in the emergency room, I have no recollection, so I couldn't help the police. You know, that's part of my public safety platform. We need more. We need surveillance cameras. We need better lighting, LED lighting for conservation. There's a see something, say something smartphone software where people can communicate with the police directly by voice, by text, send photographs. There's crime mapping software so people know what's happening around them. We just need to make every effort to find the wrongdoers and present the best case we can to the court, and then it's in their hands, and hopefully they will get them off our island.
This is also for Tom. Off of what you said, what are the advantages or disadvantages of putting cameras throughout the city? And would you be worried about infringing on people's right to privacy?
There is no right to privacy when you're out in public. And if people are concerned about Big Brother, well, let me say this. With cameras, there's the old saying, a photograph is worth 1,000 words. Well, a video is worth far more because it shows people in motion. In addition, if people are concerned about Big Brother, consider your cell phone, because I understand that every 7 seconds, your cell phone is communicating with the nearest cell phone tower. That's how it maintains service. So the government, if it wanted to, can track your movements, and they can tell who you're with if they have a cell phone. So if the government wanted to, they could find out that we're all in this room together. You know, or those of us who have our cell phones and we have them on. So really, that's I'm not concerned about Big Brother or invasion of privacy. The cameras are very valuable, especially if they can be viewed by 911 dispatch in real time, because then they can help the officers on the field.
Thanks, Tom. With all the politicians in this room, I don't know that I want it out that we're around them at one time. Next up, Paul.
Okay, Commissioner Weekly, since you're getting dissed down there, and since Tom brought it up, parking fees, restrictions in Old Town, decals, taxes, other taxes. What's the deal with you and your parking? It's not just residences, because with all the expansion of bed and breakfasts that went on during the late 80s and 90s, we now have 8 or 9 cars per house than what we had back in the day. So, the other question that I've been asked to ask you is, when was the last time you paid for parking?
About an hour and a half ago or so. And they can go look at my car, and you see the ticket there until 8:18, so we have to be out by then. So that's when the last time I paid for parking was just a little while ago. So, you know what? This district is the most impacted district in the entire city. We have all the nightlife, we have the restaurants, we have the cruise ship passengers, we have everybody that's in the historic district. You know, it's a tremendous impact on the residents who live here, and it affects their quality of life. And I have to, Tom doesn't keep up apparently with my position on issues, because the position that he quoted is not my position. The position has changed some time ago, where I have been talking to John Wilkins to look at a citywide residential parking program, for one. Number two is that we can't just look at the parking. We also have to look at improving our public transportation. We have to look at ways to encourage more people to use their bicycles. And you had mentioned about the bed and breakfast. Myself, and at the time Commissioner Sally Lewis, were the only 2 commissioners on the commission that voted against all of those, or most of those, bed and breakfasts that are on Fleming Street, that are on Eaton Street. I had to vote one on Eaton Street that belonged to my cousin. I had to vote against it. You know, I said, this is the right thing, because you're going to impact the neighborhoods. So the issue is addressed, and I think there has to be more of a solution than just reserving places in front of people's houses. The other thing is, remember that there's a lot of free spaces in the residential parking zone. And actually, there's more free spaces than there are residential spaces.
Thanks, Jim.
Question for Jimmy. You've been mayor or commissioner how many years? 25?
Since 24.
24. Are there any votes on the commission that you regret?
Yeah.
What are they?
I didn't figure you'd get away with that.
I'm sorry.
I didn't figure you'd get away with that easy.
Yeah. Well, I have tried. So, there's probably a number that I probably, after I voted, I walked away from saying, why did I vote that way? And actually, there's one just recently that I cast that I regret the way I voted, and that's on the development that's going on in Simonton Street there. I wish I would have voted differently on that. I think it's going to have a negative impact on our affordable housing, and that's one vote that just recently that I cast that I wish I had not cast that way.
Have you ever taken any action to correct that, to bring it back up?
No, I haven't.
Actually, guys, that's pretty much it for these guys. So, thank you, guys. It's a whirlwind night. We really appreciate it, everyone. All right. Thank you, guys. Our mayor, Craig Cates, and his challenger, Margaret Romero. Without any delay, we'll get right to it. I think Jenna's starting off. Jenna?
All right, this is for Mayor Cates. Are you confident that HOB was the best choice for City Hall, and why?
Yeah, with Glenn Archer. I think I said that word, those two words a few times in the last few years. No, I'm sure it absolutely was the best choice. And then when this project's done, it'll show that. Then the citizens are proud of it. I just had a gentleman that went to the school, bought a model of the facility. So proud that the school's going to be restored to City Hall. He was going to present it to the city, so it'll be on display there. And we're going to have a room in there for the history of the school also, so the citizens can come see. So, no, I think it's the best idea, and I'm very proud of it.
So we'll do time about here, and let's ask Margaret a question. If you look around Key West, we have an abundance of hotel and restaurant jobs, basically service industry, and not many high-paying, high-skill jobs outside of government. Private sector jobs we do have often require government-subsidized workforce housing. What plans, if any, do you envision that might bring higher-paying non-government jobs to Key West?
That's one of the things that we discussed when I was on the Strategic Planning Committee. We had looked at things like IT, remote professional services, things having to do with colleges, things having to do with research, and the staffs that would carry on that research, especially with things having to do with our ecology and the environment that surrounds us. We also took a look at the things we could do with bringing more military jobs down here, things that are dependable jobs, and of course they are more high paying, as has been done in the past. That's just a very brief answer, though, Paul.
Okay. Margaret, the other day at the City Commission meeting, the city manager's report kind of turned into a train wreck over the homeless issue and the property there. In terms of priorities, we're looking at a lot of moving parts here. We have the SPCA, we have mosquito control, we have the idea of an assisted living facility, we have the homeless facility. Where are your priorities? How would you address them, in what order? Who gets priority?
I would say the priority would go to mosquito control, because if we don't do something with mosquito control staying there, that is going to be a tax burden of anywhere from $2 to $5 million to have them relocate. I think that we need to do something with SPCA. They have had money funded for a long time to rebuild, and they need additional space, and from what I understand, they're willing to expand and then rebuild in the area that they're at right now. As far as I know, we have a lease with the county for the COTS facility right now at the Sheriff's Department. That would have to be renegotiated, and of course there are certain things regarding our building codes and such that would have to be addressed. And in a nutshell, that's where I would go with it for right now as far as those three pieces of land. If you're asking me, does it need to be moved down to the Easter Seals location? My sentiment on that is no, and it does not need to be a 24/7 for the chronically homeless or the vagrants, mainly because right now there's a lot of push going on. The study was done by Dr. Marlbutt. Somehow or other, Mr. Vitas commissioned it. It was under $20,000, so it kind of came in the back door. A number of things in that report were refuted by the nonprofits. A lot of people who had been alluded that they were on board have come out and said no, they're not on board. So we do need to do something about safe shelter. However, we also need to follow the things, that's in the Pottinger case. And I think we need to work early on with all of the service providers, the sheriff and the county, and I don't think that's been done so far to the degree that people thought it had been done. So my priority is first to work with people and then get on with it.
Thank you.
Mayor Cates, I'd like to do a follow-up with that. There's been a lot of controversy with you wanting to do use that property for the homeless. And what guarantees can you give us, or if you can, in what ways will you discourage the continual homelessness that many people come to? In other words, a lot of people think that we are enablers and that we have them come down. How do you reconcile both in creating that home for the homeless?
Thank you for the question. It's very complex, and I've been working on this a long time. And yes, some commissioners were on board, and now they've switched. What reasons, I don't know. But we were moving that direction. The commission wanted to go in that direction because they knew that we have to do something. We have a lawsuit against this at COTS, and part of the settlement that they're agreeing to is to move the Easter seals. And now all of a sudden, they don't want to move the Easter seals, all right? But the settlement will be coming out next Tuesday. So that being said, if we could end up with no location, if the sheriff, we have to move out, we force them to close that down, then we have no place to move, then we have homeless living on the streets, on the boulevard, everywhere, just like they did many years ago. We've worked very hard in the last few years. I believe the homeless count is down. Mr. Marbert's report had a name for every person that was on that list. So it seemed like there was more homeless, but the point in time count is they walk around, they ask, are you homeless? If you say yes, they mark you down. If you say no, they don't mark you down. So it's not very accurate, but we used it for years, so it stayed pretty consistent. This was an account with names on them. So that being said, yes, while they're coming and going, that's possible, but they are people and they know who they are. That being said, I've been working with the Sheriff's Department. We're bringing the county to the table, the Sheriff's Department to the table. They realize the expense that they're spending there, millions of dollars a year. So, no, that is a plan and it should come back together.
This is also for Mayor Cates. Do you support the channel widening study and why?
Yeah, I've been consistent on this since it started. Yes, I do. But I'm also consistent that I don't say I support widening the channel. All right, I've been here my whole life. I've seen a lot of changes. Cruise ships are an important part of our economy, but they're not the major part of our economy. Our tourists that come here and stay are a major part of our current economy. Our winter residents, that's a big percentage of our economy, and their quality of life and the citizens is very important. That being said, the study will tell us if it can be done and when it can be done and how much it can be done for and who's going to pay for it. And the citizens still have the commission and the citizens still have input before it is done. That being said, I've always said the more information you have to make an informed decision, the better. I applaud these groups that now there's a lot of information that's coming out on both sides, and I thank them for that because now the citizens can make an informed decision on this vote.
Mayor Cates, you're the one with the record, so you're the one getting picked on the most. Margaret, I'll ask you a question that you might have some thoughts about. Some folks around are saying that the Truman waterfront will be resolved about the same time as the Palestinian issue. What do you propose to make this property actually come together and happen?
Well, I think.
I was asking it to Margaret. I'm sorry.
Oh,
okay.
I What would I do about it? First thing I would do is make sure that we didn't leave the Truman Waterfront Advisory Board in the dark for the last 6 months. They were surprised to learn about the grant that had been written to secure funds for the amphitheater. I think what we need to do is have a closer working relationship between our people who sit on the dais as well as our city staff. We need to get something going. We have had men, women, children down there with sports groups. We don't have toilets at work down there. The recent police athletic league benefit had to be held away from the PAL facilities. We didn't have any toilet facilities they could use. I think we are woefully slow. There have been a lot of what I will call false starts. And while our city planner says we have plans to get everything going, it is one of the things that would make I would try my best to make sure to work with other members of the dais to get something going for the people of Key West down there, usable, even if it's just grass that people can go throw a frisbee on.
Okay, Mayor Cates, we heard the District 1 candidates talk about parking. Now, they represent District 1. Other commissioners represent other districts and have different interests in parking. You're elected citywide. What is your solution to the parking issue, particularly for the Old Town residents?
Well, there's no absolute solution to this. The best that we can come up is to make it work as good as possible. I've already bringing forward special parking permits for workers down there for like $25 a month. It's in the process, should be brought forward here soon. Taking longer than it should, as government always does. But so they can park there and work, the service workers can work. But we definitely need residential parking places down there, but we can't exclude the rest of the community. They pay taxes for them streets just like everybody else. And it was a good point that these homes turned into guest houses. Where I grew up was a single family home, and now it's a guest house there on Fleming Street. And we had one parking place for my mother and one for my uncle. So that being said, now I think it has about 10 rooms. So that is a problem down there, but we can't unwind that. A no new parking facility down there at Angela Street is going to help. Commissioner Rossi has brought up when the lease comes up for Concrete Public, that piece of property in the back that's a parking lot now belongs to the city. And we renegotiate that, we could get that back and build a parking facility there. So that would relieve some of the strain on the neighborhoods around there.
This is a question from the audience, and this is from Margaret. Marriage equality has gained, excuse me, critical momentum, and marriage equality is now federally mandated. Like San Francisco issuing marriage licenses despite California law forbidding equality, would you support Key West issuing marriage license to our citizens of all genders, regardless of the Florida law and amendment?
One of the things I think is important is we have to go along with the Florida law. Am I all for people who want to share their lives with someone else, and whether it's the form of marriage or contractual relationships? I have no problem with that at all. But I am not someone who says to fly in the face of the state of Florida, because to do so could endanger various grants and other things that come available to us. So I think we would have to work within the system, and if we want to get something changed, that's one thing we have to do. But to say that we would go flat in the face of the state of Florida, I can't support that, I'm sorry. While I support people's right to be married to each other, I cannot support going against the state of Florida, because I think it would engender too many of the benefits and the grants that we might get, and that would harm the entire community of Key West, not just one group.
Okay, this is for Mayor Cates. I want to ask you about Truman Waterfront. As you know, people have complained there isn't enough being done, so what do you feel can be done to change that perception?
Well, there is a perception because not much seems like it's been done, but but a couple years ago, we took the plan back from the Spotswoods group that we're going to develop the marina, and then the city took it over to do it themselves, the marina and the uplands. We took the uplands back. The city is going to do it themselves. We started 3 years ago to put $2 million a year in a fund to save for the Truman Waterfront. Then we got a grant for $2 more million from the TDC. We got $11 million in the bank. We're going to be breaking ground on the in May on the infrastructure, and when it'll move quickly. It's not like a big giant road project like the boulevard, of course, but we were going to redo the road there so it comes out to the entrance in the back. You had to negotiate a deal with the Park Service because their entrance into their Park Service will come at the end of the road. All those things. I've been in Tallahassee twice and met with the Park Service to come up with that plan. It has come together, and it'll be starting here in a few months. When the plans get approved, they got to go through the proper approval process, and then we're going to phase it, do the infrastructure, do the road. Then they'll decide whether they want to do the amphitheater next, or maybe restore the building over there at the diesel building for shops and different stuff. So it's moving along. I know it's been a long road, but in the last 3 years, it's moved faster than it did in the last 10.
Mayor Cates, when you originally ran for office, you cited on many occasions that you wanted to run the city more like a business and less like a government bureaucracy. You still think that's possible?
Well, I'm not giving up. Let's put it that way. No, I think the city is done well. I think we got a new city manager that we hired that's very professional. Jim Scholl was a great guy. He took us to one level. I think this new city manager is taking us to the next. The city has some big projects going on. You know, about $40 million in projects, and running out of the same staff that they had before. And it's been increasing, and we're trying to keep taxes down by not adding more help. But it's been a strain on them. So that being said, some things might not be moving as fast as could, but I think it's a much friendlier workplace. They treat the citizens better. They treat them. We constantly pushing. They're the owners. They're your customers. You have to take care of them. We work for them, and they pay our bills. So I think that attitude has been changing over there. The building department works well with the city, which used to be a tough. The code enforcement is much friendlier, but nobody likes code enforcement because if they've done something wrong, obviously they don't like getting a speeding ticket. But I think our police department has done a great job. I mean, we have a police department with 105 officers, sworn officers, and we have a little island that gets 3 million visitors a year. And our crime is down. It's been going down every year. So that being said, I think it's running more efficient.
Margaret, the school board gave Glenn Archer School to the city for a new city hall. Did the city get a good deal?
No.
Explain that.
The reason I feel the city didn't get a good deal is that I don't know that the entire community got a good deal. We shoehorned over 1,000 children into the HOB campus. Those children could have stayed at Glen Archer and left at the school. It was in the school board budget, and I hate to talk about school board things at a city election, but the school board's 5-year plan indicated it would cost $4.5 million in order to renovate Glen Archer for higher technology and better use. They put close to $11 million into a new elementary school over at the HOB site. At the current time, we only have what is called a conditional assessment from CH2M Hill for a little over $17 million. When we take a look at that with the more than doubled cost of the fire station that we should have been in last October downtown for our firemen, right there you've got an additional $3 million cost to the citizens of Key West. We've got another 3 years of rent at Havana Plaza, probably another $1.5 million. And we still, at least to my knowledge and my last asking, we do not have the architect's estimate of how much it's going to actually cost. His figures for his own fee have roughly tripled from what he estimated prior to the referendum. So all in all, I don't think it's good for our children. And oh, by the way, I found out that state law passed in 2006 requires that when a school district or board surpluses that property, any school property, they are first supposed to give right of first refusal to the charter schools. And having talked to the charter schools, that was not done for Montessori or any of the other charter schools here in the area. And I think we could have kept it a school.
Mayor Cates, I want to just go back to the Truman waterfront for another question. What do you think would be you're talking about all these plans and the amphitheater. What do you think would be the best use for the citizens of Key West, the taxpayers of Key West, so we would get a little bit more revenue back and it wouldn't be such a burden for us taxpayers?
Well, that's a very good question, because I've always said less is more down there. We need. I'm not in favor of building the big community center down there for $12 million, and that has to be maintained and funded from the taxpayers. I want open space for the boat races, for the sailboat races, for events like the wine festival. I mean, the amphitheater, I believe, should just be a small amphitheater, just basically a stage where electronics is there. It's covered area for equipment, and maybe some fixed seating, and the rest is just a field for people to sit on that could be multi-use. It could be a ball field and then turned into an amphitheater. I want it to be kept open, and that's the least expensive to maintain. And then we could rent it for different events and something the citizens be proud of, and not just build it up like we do everywhere else.
Margaret, do you support the channel widening study, and why?
I have to be very honest. I will tell you all, I voted early, and I took a no position. The reason I did that was, I think any of you who've watched commission meetings over the last 7 or 8 years, and the fact that I have gone to multiple budget meetings prior to them actually coming before the city commission, is I listened very carefully to both sides in many of the forums that were held and in many of the arenas that were held. I did some of my own research. I attended the forum that was held here in the Tropic, where we had experts speaking. Now, with that said, that yes, I have already cast my vote as a no. I will tell you that, as always, I will listen if I am brought all other facts. But so far, what has been presented, as far as I'm concerned, in the research I have done so far, I will be honest with you and tell you I have voted no. But I will remain open if people bring me additional facts, and if I'm put on the dais, I will consider all factual information that comes forward.
Mayor Cates, we always seem to be in some lawsuit or another, to the point where the city, we're tying up resources with legal fees. We're sometimes, unfortunately, paying settlements that seem huge by our personal budgets. Do you have any thoughts on some way that in the future this litigious behavior might be reduced in some way?
Well, I think it's being reduced now. We got a good city attorney with Sean Smith and 2 good assistants. They're doing a lot of this lawsuits. It's in-house. I know about the lawsuits because the mayor gets served for every lawsuit. A lot of them are just suing because they know the city will settle a certain amount of money, and attorneys will do it for free, and then they get a percentage of it. And unfortunately, that's our world. It's always somebody else's fault, not mine. And that's the way we live now. But that being said, the city has not really been caught on a serious libel case in many, many years, and the city is doing a good job when something does go wrong to correct it doesn't happen again. That's a lot of repairing of the sidewalks. We get a lot of trip and falls, but we know a lot of it because people have been drinking and partying, but unfortunately, that's the way it goes. So we repair them whenever we can. But I think it's getting better. It's going in the right direction, and I think that's the whole climate in the city now is more concerned about lawsuits and responsibility, and I think we're going in the right direction.
Okay. Last couple of questions, Bill.
Greg, I'd like you to respond to Margaret's comments about Glen Archer as City Hall and the fact, well, what she said, that it was not a good deal.
Well, it's been going on for several years. She's never going to agree with it, and but it's moving forward, and I think the things keep getting said, just like the architect's rate tripled from the beginning. Well, originally it was just going to be a minor restoration inside, about a $4 million to $6 million project. Now it's turned into completely rebuilding, rated for 180-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, metal frame completely inside. That has all changed, so obviously the prices have increased. But this commission voted to go that way. This is going to be a building that's going to be good for another 50 to 100 years when they're done. And they're spending a little more money than originally they wanted to spend, but they got a great product when they're done. And it's going to be a beautiful city hall, something we'll be proud of for years to come. We're going to have vents in there. We're going to share some with the school board, the office space to save taxpayers money. We're going to share the auditorium for events and their commission to save the taxpayers money. We'll be able to share video equipment. So it's going to be more efficient, save the taxpayers money, be a beautiful building. So yes, I believe it's a good deal, and I think the citizens of Key West do too.
Last question, Richard.
Yes, Mark. I always a complex challenge to balance quality of life with our tourist industry. Without, how do you see us in the future in a strategic plan to balance our quality of life without us becoming a banana republic in a way where we're just a resort town or a tourist town? And how would you try to balance that?
Okay, I'll start off by saying we're not just a resort town. I'm going to say right up front that many of our people who own second homes here are just as much in love with Key West as those of us who were born and raised here. As far as the balance goes, unfortunately, many people refer to the Banana Republic when they allude to the number of people who were here for a short time with cruise ships. And let me say right up front, I am not against cruise ships. They provide a piece and a diversity of what we have for the tourist industry. I think what we need to do is to continue to diversify the types of tourists that come here. Our own city staff, as well as the TDC, and by the way, I did sit on the District Advisory Committee for the TDC for 3 years, are continually looking at diversifying the tourists that come here. One of our city planners gave a seminar about 1.5 years, 2 years ago that talked about advancing ecological and cultural tourism. And I think that's something else that we really need to strive and work with our folks, because these are people who will stay longer. Typically they spend more on average. There are a lot of pluses. So as far as the quality of life, I think if we have people who are coming that are more respectful of our ecology, our environment, and our culture, I think we might be getting a different group of tourists. And again, we still need to have our fun things like the poker run. We need to still have the things like the powerboat races and the sailing races. Those also bring some people that are very generous with our service industry folks as well. So I think we continually as a city need to reassess where we are and where we're going. You know, at one time as a city, we depended on sponging. We've changed.
Thank you, guys. Give them a hand. Okay, well, we have a couple panelists that are heeding the call of nature, but we have enough to get going here. A couple of ground rules and to explain what we're doing. And I'll actually let one of the panelists explain, because this is tonight's a little different than some of the other forums that have happened. We have kind of a pro side and a con side, and that's how we're going to address them as we do questions. Each side will be able to choose who they want to answer, but we've asked them to, once they do that, to just answer one of them. It gets confusing if they try to answer each other's things. As introductions, we have, actually I'm going to let them do it because the names mean something, and I want to get it right. So, John, would you introduce yourself and who you represent?
Actually,
use the mic.
I just can't pronounce my name.
Oh.
I'm John Dolan Heitlinger. I represent the Key West Seaport Alliance, which is a group of business people that got together to encourage folks to support our cruise ship industry and also organize the political committee to support that.
My name is Jennifer Holst. I'm a local attorney here in town, and I am also a member of the Greater Key West Chamber of Commerce Political Action Committee. We were also formed independent from the chamber, but under the chamber's name to advocate for our affirmative position on the referendum.
Jolly, would you go next? Because I want to save Mark to the end.
My name is Jolly Benson. I'm electrical contractor and lighting installer here in Key West. I represent the Key West Committee for Responsible Tourism, and we're encouraging everybody to vote no on October 1st or before.
Go ahead. I just wanted to have you last so I could make a point.
Okay, thanks, Todd. I'm Mark Songer. This evening I'm representing Last Stand. We've taken a position against the feasibility study, encouraging people to vote no, and that's why Todd has invited us to participate this evening.
Yeah, and to clarify a bit more, Jolly, Jennifer, and John all represent their respective PACs with political action committees. Mark is here tonight representing Last Stand, which is a nonprofit. And there's been some question about that, and it's a little off, but John, or Mark, would you explain how Last Stand, many aren't used to nonprofits being able to take a position in a vote. How are you able to do that?
There is a different rule for candidates for office from issues like we're facing here. 501c3 nonprofits like Last Stand are not allowed to support or oppose candidates for office, but for issues we are allowed. Then we have a separate set of rules that looks at our tax exempt status, and we are limited in the amount of money that we can spend in pursuit of that effort. Fortunately, most of what Last Stand does is done by volunteers. We'll probably be doing a little bit of advertising before the election is over, and that'll be the money that we spend.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I hope that clears it up, and it makes a nice balanced panel as well. So, a question Bill asked last night, which was fairly interesting and got some news attention. How many people here will be able to vote for this referendum? A show of hands, please. Hopefully it's a lot. It is. And then the next one is, how many of you have already voted? Okay, very different than the forum we had last night was unanimous. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. Well, I'll let Bill do it because
The question I asked last night was, how many people are genuinely undecided on the channel widening study issue? Genuinely undecided. We have some hands. 1, 2, 3. 3. Okay, that was my question. Didn't have anybody last night, but the crowd was much smaller.
I was curious of my own question anyway, so we got a lot of information out there. All right, with that, we're going to get right to it. As we go through this, we're going to ask, the panel is going to ask a question of either the pro or con side, and then they will decide who's going to answer, because they each have their own expertise. Sound good, guys? Sure. All right. Bill, who's first?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Actually, I think it's Paul starts.
Oh, okay.
Okay, then. Let's see who we'll start with.
Live radio, it's tough.
Yeah, it's fun. Face for radio. Okay, let's go with the question for the pro group. If we believe the vote no folks, and that they claim that a yes vote will result in our ecological ruin, financial impoverishment, and the general enslavement of ourselves to the wealthy. What do you say to those on your side who are going to vote yes and thus be responsible for such a dire result?
Am I the comedian response? Is that you get the attorney, and then I think that kind of language that has been used by the folks that are encouraging people to vote no has not been good for our discussion. I believe that we both have legitimate positions on whether or not we think this referendum is a good idea, and the accompanying widening of the channel that will happen or won't happen. I think we don't benefit when we have people producing videos about Nazis and that kind of stuff. I think it's been very bad. And I think that the kind of positive discourse that we will have tonight, and I think there is consensus on this, is good for educating the public.
John, we've all seen the pictures of the silt plumes behind the cruise ships coming and going in the harbor. Now, you've said that it's your strong feeling that this would be environmentally beneficial to do channel widening. Now, we're not talking about deepening the channel. We're just widening it for longer cruise ships. Now, assuming they would be more powerful if they're longer, aren't they going to blow up a larger silt plume when they come and go?
No, they are not necessarily more powerful. I mean, you're talking about something in the 5% level.
Be good out there.
I think it's important to understand that silt is natural, and if I may use an aid, I was told I could use.
Go ahead. We got time. But it has to be used to answer a question, not to make a presentation.
That is the aid.
This is cooperation.
That is the natural silt plume that are around our islands all the time. The silt that you see behind a cruise ship is primarily bubbles. It is some silt. The wider you make the channel, the less you are going to get of that. Thanks, Al.
Good spirit of cooperation. And thank you for following the rules.
Yes, this is for the pro vote. I'd like to know specifically where the money is going to come from. And do you have, like the Walshes or the Swifts or that organization, pledging money so nothing will cost the taxpayer a cent? Now, if you say the state is going to do anything, help us, or the federal government's going to do anything, that is our tax dollar, whether it's local or national. So how can you possibly tell me, or this audience, that it's not going to cost us anything? And many people have likened it to a city asking the taxpayers to buy a baseball stadium so the owner would make money. And I'm just asking you, where specifically do you think this money is coming from? And has anybody pledged in the chamber, or anybody pledged any money for this $3 million study?
Well, we had, as you know, as part of the referendum language, it specifically states that this will be at no monetary cost to the city taxpayers, and that means that none of our ad valorem taxes are going to go to fund the study. Now, if there is a local contribution, and the problem with this whole scenario is that we can't actually request any funding from the federal government or from the state until we know the referendum is passed and we're going forward with the feasibility study. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg syndrome. We don't know which, you can't really do one without the other. So the city decided to move forward this way, and we have to go follow that process. So we believe historically what happens is that the federal government funds at least half of the cost, and that the state funds at least a quarter of the cost. The state could also pick up the remainder of that cost if they choose to do so. That's one of the options.
So then it would cost the taxpayer money.
Well, there are actually different types of funding, and one of the things you need to know is that the state of Florida generates approximately $5 million in sales taxes from our cruise ships here. So the state makes a lot of money off of those cruise ships, and they have a protected and vested interest in that, and they're going to make sure that they invest those funds wisely. So that's sales tax money. And if you're talking about if there's going to be a local contribution, certainly, as the Chamber has pledged to raise this money so that our taxpayers don't have to do it, we were going to be contacting all of the cruise lines. We're going to be contacting the Walsh family. We're going to be contacting anybody that is an interested stakeholder. So that's the reason that we did it. We did not want this to fall on the backs of the taxpayers.
So, Jennifer, you can guarantee that we will not be paying anything for this study?
Well, it's in the referendum. So it's a binding referendum, so that the city, as they put that on the ballot, has to follow that referendum.
As a judge, I'd say you're being argumentative.
I just want to be specific. If indeed you win, and there is a study, it's not going to cost us any money.
That's in the referendum. Certainly, the commission has to follow that.
Good.
All right, this is for Jolly or Mark. It's been agreed upon by both sides that it would take 20 years before the first ship hits the ground. So what's your vision of the Key West economy 20 years from now?
Well, it's going to take certainly quite a bit of time to get this whole project going if we agree to go forward with it. There's no guarantee that the economy that we have now will continue to be the economy that we have in 20 years, specifically with regards to cruise ships. So our plan would be, instead of investing tens of millions of dollars in a project with a single revenue stream and no guarantee of repayment, that we would take another approach and start looking at different ways to broaden our tourist base, specifically ecotourism and environmentally sustainable tourism and cultural tourism, because a lot of people do come down here because we have famous writers, famous artists, and it's always been a great place for culture to come down and hang out. So to say that our economy will strictly be what it is now and we need to pursue that avenue seems to me a bit naive. I feel that we should be looking into other sources of revenue, including cruise ships, but we shouldn't be destroying our natural environment in order to accommodate that industry solely.
I'll ask this question to the no vote folks. Interesting in your response just now, you're talking about more and better tourism. We currently are at capacity on hotels. Where are all these new tourists going to stay? Yeah.
Well, it's not so much that we're at capacity, it's that we're going to be looking at maintaining that capacity. And these people are coming down for a whole bunch of different reasons. And we do have an economic component with cruise ships. But the people that are currently arriving on cruise ships, if they come back, like to experience other things besides what cruise ship people experience. So we have to make sure that we're supporting those people. And your question is, where are we going to put them? Well, we've got 500 hotel rooms coming up in just a few years. They've just went offline. That certainly contributes to the fact that we are seeing an increase in capacity in other areas of the island. So we're doing really well right now. And for us to say we're going to look into this industry exclusively is at the expense of these other visitors that come and see us. So yeah, we should be looking at ways to get these people that come down here to have an ecological component, I feel. I don't know if that specifically answers your question, where we're going to put them. We'll find a place for them. We're at 88% right now. There's still some more room. So, they'll come.
Okay, question for the yes vote. If and when Cuba opens up, Havana will be equidistant as Key West will for several of the major cruise ports along the East Coast. Now, what would be the impact of Havana opening up to cruise ships versus a hypothetical no vote on the dredging and no dredging, no widening of our channel? How would they compare the effects of those two?
I think my answer here is going to have to be conjecture because I don't own the cruise ship lines. I know that over the years, I've been here 22 years, and when I first got here, one of the first things I used to hear about tourism was, and when Castro dies, and we're still waiting. I don't think we know exactly how all of our tourism is going to be affected, and I think that a linkage for a cruise ship coming here and then going to Havana is an excellent one. The cruise ships would really prefer to sail very slowly. They like you being on board. The further they have to go, the less profitable they are. And so I would expect that you would see cruise ship trips scheduled that would come to Key West, then would go on to Havana. And in fact, one of our city commissioners is discussing that topic with some Cuban officials in the upcoming couple of months.
Jolly or either one of you. One of the arguments that have been made is that not bringing in bigger cruise ships will really hurt a lot of people in that industry and the workers that we do have there. And I wonder, coming back or answering that, why do you not think that would be a big issue? In fact, if we have bigger cruise ships, that we would need more people to work and that we would put more people to work?
There's two questions there. Let me try and split them out. The first question was people being concerned about their jobs. And what we've seen is that in Key West, the jobs are following the general tourism economy. When things were down in 2009 and 2010, our employment was down. Things are back up, and today there are more people employed in Key West than there has been at any time in the last 10 years if you look at the Chamber of Commerce statistics that are published on their website. So the fact that the cruise ships have declined a little bit during that time period from a little over 800,000 to less than 800,000 is not a big driver on what employment is going to be. Well, certainly there are some industries that are affected, but the biggest thing that drives jobs and the biggest thing that drives spending in Key West is our long-term tourists and the money that they spend here.
Okay, this is for the pro side. This also has to do with jobs. Now, the chamber has gone on record stating that the channel widening would generate 1,200 jobs in Key West. Can you explain that?
No, because that's not what we said. What we looked at was the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers reconnaissance report, which estimated that there will be a job creation, and they call it a federal interest, but those jobs are created locally. If you look at that, if we look at what people don't understand is as our cruise numbers keep continuing to decline, although they're at 750 right now, we're looking out in the next few years, we're looking at a loss of, probably down to 400,000 or 500,000. So if we are able to widen the channel and get some of the cruise ships that are going to be defecting here because their ships are not going to be able to be accommodated in our port, then there's going to be a loss of jobs. And one of the things that people overlook is that cruise ships are a driver of our overall tourism economy. The TDC, their own research, their visitor profile surveys when they walk around town and they ask people, how did you come to Key West for the first time? 13% of all of those people visited, and these are long-term people that come back for overnight visits, that 13% of those had arrived for the first time on a cruise ship. That is how they were exposed to Key West. So if we look at our 2 million visitors a year in Key West itself, that's over 250,000 of those that may never have arrived. So there is an impact as our continuing our cruise ship numbers continue to decline. There is going to be a reciprocal impact on our overall tourism economy. So the reconnaissance report is what states that there could be a job creation of on a low end of 150 to a high end of 1,800. I didn't state that. The chamber didn't state that. That is in the reconnaissance report.
Okay, I'll ask this one to the con group. I have some quotes here that my research assistant pulled for me, and
Janelle, you have your assistants help you with
it. Yeah, beauty of working at a newspaper. And I believe, Mr. Benson, you were quoted as saying that this would end up ripping up our ecosystem. We know that it'll be a disaster for the reef, and it's an economic disaster either way. And I'm curious if these statements that you made are based on any empirical data, or if they were just revealed to you in some omnipotent providence.
It's a little bit of both. If you consider the Army Corps of Engineers reconnaissance report of 2010, they state that there will be significant and negative environmental impacts. We've done a lot of research into this. I'm sure you have as well. If you look up, for instance, dredging effects in Australia, they've done a recent study about the damage that did to coral reefs. In Bermuda, there's another study about the effects of cruise ships and dredging on coral reefs. So the negative effect on our ecology will be severe. I mean, we are talking about ripping up 150,000 cubic yards, 17 acres of live bay bottom. That's not going to be something that you can just magically regenerate, according to the people that are actually doing the science to regenerate such corals. They say the science isn't there yet, and you don't go in and burn a forest down just because you have the technology to regrow trees. That's a quote from Dr. David Vaughan, paraphrased, but that's pretty much what he said. So yeah, I stand by the quotes that we are going to see severe ecological effects if we go forward with this vote, which is in actually a process by the Army Corps of Engineers that ends up leading to dredging the channel or widening the channel. Did that answer? Do you need more? Okay.
For the no vote group. It's my understanding that the sanctuary currently has no provision for this kind of dredging in sanctuary waters. Proponents of the idea say that it is simple as a permit for a dock. Can you walk us through the permit process?
Bill, this permit process is going to be very complicated. The sanctuary, the head of the sanctuary, Sean Morton, was at our forum here on the 22nd, and he confirmed what you just said. There is no permit category. The permit process that the chamber has been discussing would be a general permit, and there are very, very high thresholds that would have to be demonstrated to NOAA for that permit to be issued. You have to be showing that there was little or no significant environmental degradation as a result of the project, and that the project was consistent with the purposes the sanctuary was established for. So the sanctuary was established after 3 weeks in a row, large ships ran into the coral reef and did damage. So that's why we have no dredging, no altering of the sea bottom. And it's going to be very difficult for the NOAA people to be able to issue a permit that says this is consistent with the reason that they're established.
Yes, for the pro vote. Jennifer, I just want to follow up. AARP magazine said we were the least desirable port to come to because all it was honky-tonks and little or no value, really. And it was on the list of really the least desirable port to come to. How do you reconcile that with what you just said about people coming back? And the larger the cruise ships, the more crowded the streets are going to be, the more traffic we're going to have. And how do you know that it will become least desirable with the bigger cruise ships?
Well, it's important to understand that we're not talking about bringing in bigger cruise ships. We're talking about maintaining what we have. Mega ships will not fit into the channel. They're not going to fit into the channel if it were widened. So we're talking about, very simply, about a class of ship that is similar in passenger counts to what we have, that are being designed and built to be longer, ironically, to accommodate advanced wastewater treatment systems and other environmental facilities that they're adding on board. So there's not going to be necessarily any significant impact or significant increase in the number of passengers. So that's one thing that we need to understand. As far as AARP magazine, who knows what their qualifications are or how they did the rating system? I don't know. I do know that the empirical data that we do have does not suggest that at all, because the cruise lines say that it's their #1 highest rated destination. It has an overall satisfaction rate of 85%. It also is showing no impact on our lodging industry. They're at full capacity. Almost every month of the year, even in the summer nowadays. They have the highest ADR in the state of Florida. So that argument doesn't really make any sense, because it isn't happening. There hasn't been a significant decline since cruise ships came. And in fact, when the cruise ships first came here, we were begging them to come here. This is not, now it's become, now we have more overnight visitors and we don't want the cruise ships anymore. That doesn't make any sense. It will impact our overall economy. So there hasn't been a single bit of evidence to suggest that cruise ships have caused any decline in our overnight visitors. It just doesn't equate with the numbers that we have here. So that's a statement that is somebody's opinion. Certainly you can have an opinion, but it's not backed up by any evidence.
All right, this is for Jolly or Mark. There's been a lot of forums on the channel widening study, and there's conflicting points made by both sides. So who should the public believe?
I think that's pretty obvious that they should totally believe us. We've maintained a consistent position, and that a no vote means that we're not interested in dredging the main channel. They've gone from it's just a study to passengers won't increase to, all over the place. So I would say believe us and vote no.
Okay, so now I get to ask a pro question. Don't have to take on Jolly anymore, although maybe a little bit, because it's another quote. It's said that the cruise ship visits to Key West benefit only 6 people. That's a quote. Thus, it's being claimed that the many are inconvenienced for the enhanced welfare of the few. Do you have any comments on that?
Was that for pro or? Pro. Oh, okay. It's one of those remarks that, unfortunately, in our society, people that own businesses and employ people are made out to be monsters. And I think it's so sad, because there are not 6 people that benefit from cruise ships. There are thousands of people in this community that are employed in the tourism industry, and hundreds of people that are employed by whatever he calls. I don't even know who the 6 people are. Am I one? I don't know. Are you one? Who? I don't know what he means by that. But I know that the largest employers in this city employ hundreds of people, and those people are directly impacted. You want to talk about quality of life? How good is your quality of life if you don't have a job? And we need to think about that. This is not just about the environment. Yes, we want to protect the environment. Absolutely. I'm a lover of the environment too. I dive and sail, and I'm a vegetarian of all things, because I believe that is the way to be. If you want to have a constructive discussion about what is right for our community, we have to let go of those stereotypes because they're not productive. I'm not a monster. I'm not a Nazi. John's not a Nazi. We got to let go of that. And we need to, if we're all going to sit down at the table and have a productive discussion, the labels have to stop. Of course, there are more than 6 people that are affected by this. We have so many people we have hundreds of people that have now contributed to our political action committee because this means a lot to them. So I disagree with that, and I think Jolly knows that that's not true.
Okay. For the pro group. At the Chamber of Commerce Forum a couple of weeks ago, John, you said that currently when cruise ships come to town, they deal with their solid waste and their wastewater better than the city deals with its own. But at the same forum, Dr. Lockwood said, we are currently getting the dirtiest cruise ships because all the clean ones are going to Alaska. And we're just going to keep getting the dirty ships. How do you rationalize those two statements?
I think I'm correct, and I see a number of people in the audience that took the 4-hour tour of the sewage treatment and recycling on one of the cruise ships that came here, and those higher-end vessels have absolutely top-flight recycling. As I said, it is better than what we do here because they take it with them and recycle completely. I think Dr. Lockwood may have gotten a little carried away on that, but he's not here to defend himself, so it's probably not fair for me to say that. But I do believe, well, I know for certain that all the ships that come here comply with all the laws. One of the reasons that we want to have our channel widened is the ships that are replacing the ones currently, some of which can't come in here, do have the very highest levels of things like advanced wastewater treatment and that kind of thing. And those are the kind of ships we'd like to have come here.
Again, this is for the pro. The reef, our reef today is in trouble. I think maybe even less than 6% alive, with hundreds and hundreds of tourists being dumped on basically rock right now. With the influence of global warming, pollution, and us, basically, misuse. What can you say to me that would, or to us, that wouldn't it be better to do no harm? To leave it as it is right now, because we know what it is right now. And as a doctor's oath would be, the first thing to do is to do no harm. And I would ask you, now that we know where the reef is at now because of our misuse, pollution, and global warming, how do we know that this dredging isn't even going to add more to it? That's what I want to ask.
The simple answer to that is if the feasibility shows that there will be a net negative effect on the environment, reef, harbor, all of that, from the widening won't happen. That's one of the reasons you do the feasibility study. So if you want to know the facts of what the real effects of this will be, which I believe both the widening and the mediation that has to come along with that, I believe the end of this will be that our environment will be in better shape once it's done. But we're not going to know that unless we do a study.
All right, this is for Jolly or Mark. Let's say that the referendum passes and the study is done. With all the hurdles to overcome, what are the odds that the channel gets widened?
Jenna, that's an interesting question because there will be a lot that will happen if the study does pass. And the first thing that would have to happen is the city of Key West will spend time negotiating with the Army Corps of Engineers. Even though the chamber has promised to put up $750,000, the city will be responsible as a local partner. The city will also be responsible to find the state funding for $750,000. So there is a lot of negotiation that's got to go on with that. The environmental impacts are going to be very problematic for getting the Army Corps to even start the study because the officials at NOAA won't issue a permit, and the Army Corps has said that until they get an indication or a change in the federal law that protects the sanctuary, the federal regulations, the federal law, either way, that they won't be able to ask for funding for it. So there'll be a lot of maneuvering in order to negotiate how this thing will happen, and a lot of maneuvering in order to try and understand the environmental impacts. I don't know who's going to pay for an environmental impact study before NOAA can say, Army Corps, go ahead and do it, that would otherwise be part of the feasibility study. So you're kind of chasing your tail at this point.
I have a question for the pro group. Irrespective of the language of the referendum, how is a yes vote and a carrying of this referendum not going to be spun up as a mandate for dredging?
I think when you read what a feasibility study is, I mean, I suspect, well, I'm confident that Jolly and Mark will believe that a vote for the feasibility study is a vote for widening the channel. I can tell you that the people that I represent in the Key West Seaport Alliance believe that we should widen the channel. I will tell you that the feasibility study may come out so that we don't widen the channel. So I think an accurate understanding of what a positive vote means is, to quote a great American sitting next to me, it's about the study. We want the facts to determine whether or not we should widen the channel.
I want to continue that with the no vote group. This is a binding referendum, although there's some question about how it can bind future commissions. In your view, would it obligate the city commission to vote in favor of any dredging proposal, anything along this line that comes up before them?
Well, it's interesting because when if we on the referendum on October 1st, if it comes out yes, the city is bound to go and request a feasibility study from the Army Corps of Engineers. That documentation can then be used as sort of evidence for Congress to change the rules that currently protect the National Marine Sanctuary. And when you talk about what a feasibility study is to the Army Corps of Engineers, it's one step in a very lengthy process that leads to the ultimate project completion, which in this case is widening the channel by dredging and other means. So our opportunity right now is to say we don't want to widen the channel. The reconnaissance study has already concluded that it would be favorable to widen the channel, regardless of the ecological effects. They see that the net economic gain, which in our opinion is flawed because they discounted the entire value of the National Marine Sanctuary. They only looked at cruise ships versus as us as a port versus the Bahamas and Mexico and others. So the economic model that they used is flawed. They'll be the first ones to tell you we're not very good at the economics. We're good at the engineering part of it. So for us to say we want this feasibility study suggests to the Army Corps of Engineers that we've signed on to the whole project. That's what normally you would have the entire project funded before you request a feasibility study. So to say that this is just a study and then we get to look at it afterwards is sort of misreading what a large organization like the Army Corps of Engineers does when they do a feasibility study. To them, this is the first step in the entire process, and their end goal is to widen the channel. So we need to stop that now. There's been plenty of science that would show how harmful it would be, how damaging it would be to our economics, how damaging it's been to other similar situations. And then if we look at the Army Corps of Engineers in the past, we can see that they have a definite, all right, I'll stop there.
Well, you can finish your thought.
Okay, I was going to say they have a definite pattern of underestimating the impacts that their projects have on the environment. Most recently, the Port Everglades, they're in a dispute with NOAA, the Everglades Restoration Project, Mr. Go in Louisiana,
Finish your thought
etc.
quickly.
Yeah, I want to follow that up with the no.
Okay.
If you don't believe then that the Army Corps of Engineers, the sanctuary, have learned anything from the past. In other words, why don't you just trust the study and the people to find out if indeed this is going to be an environmentally impacted project or not?
Bill, Last Stand has taken a position to support the reasons the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary was established, and that's to preserve and protect what's growing out there. We have today 2 threatened species of corals. By the time anything gets started on a study, we'll have probably 6 or 7 threatened coral species. And the reconnaissance report recognizes that and says that it would be likely, when they do the environmental studies, that the critical habitat, which is where corals have been shown to grow and thrive, would be damaged by removing the 17 acres that they would be dredging. And that would be contrary to Section 7 of the Environmental Species Act that protects critical habitat. The Army Corps of Engineers also noted that in 15 years prior to when this study was published in 2010, the district had not gone against anything with a project that would violate the Endangered Species Act. So that's why Last Stand is so strong for the environment and the impacts that we're going to see from the end results of the project that this feasibility study is pursuing.
All right, this is for Jennifer or John. What do the cruise ship passenger trends for Key West look like 5-10 years from now?
The cruise ship companies have told us that they are going to replace many of the vessels that come here currently. Some of those replacements will still be able to come into the harbor, some will not. And so what they have said is, if the channel is not improved and widened so it can handle these slightly longer vessels, we will reduce the number of cruise ship visits you're going to get. Now, 10 years out, they don't schedule out that far. They schedule out about 2 years. But we have seen a decline for the past 10 years of close to 40%. Now, that starting point was following 9/11, so it was probably a little artificially high, but we're certainly down at least 30% during the past 10-year period. And they are saying they are going to keep reducing the visitation here if their vessels can't come in the harbor safely.
Well, let me follow that up, John, if you don't mind. Have this new class, this desirable class of boat, haven't they shot the harbor? Haven't they come in the channel and to determine whether or not they can use it? I mean, we hear all sorts of conflicting information that they've tested. They've come into the harbor, and with the bow thrusters and the things that they have now that help them maneuver so much more efficiently, the channel widening issue is more about convenience and crosswinds and things like that, rather than their capability of actually coming in.
Well, let me address this, since I'm sure most of the folks in this room have been in boats. The problem that we have, if there's no wind and current in the Key West Channel, the larger cruise ships can come in here with no problem. If there is wind and current, which is typical, it can result in them not wanting to come in here. And I'm not talking about hurricane level. I'm talking about this kind of significant wind and current that we get on a regular basis here. The problem is that if a cruise ship company schedules a cruise ship to come and visit Key West, they want to come to visit Key West. If they have to cancel, their passengers are unhappy if they're meeting people here. And that's why they're saying they have to be confident that those longer vessels can come in here 95% of the time, given the normal kinds of tidal and current conditions they have. And that's why they're saying, if we're not confident that this vessel could come in 95% of the time we schedule it, we're not going to schedule it. I was there when that vessel came in. If you look, it came in pretty well. There wasn't much current that day. There was some wind. They came in, turned around, and left. We are competing for that business, and that particular line decided not to bring that class of ship here because of the channel width.
This will be our last few questions, but we'll go down the line here.
For the pro group, you said basically there was going to be no major spike in the number of tourists coming in on cruise ships. So we're not talking about more passengers. But then you also said there's the figure of 1,200 jobs that were created. How can you create that many jobs and not increase the number of cruise ship passengers?
Well, as I referenced earlier, if you look at that's what the reconnaissance report estimates, and they do it on a range of job creation. So, but they take a look at what's actually happening in the industry in Key West. So by the time we actually go forward and do the study, we will have lost a significant amount of passengers during that time. So if the goal is to try to maintain what we have now, or some, whatever we decide that to be, and this is all under the city's control. We can tell we determine which cruise lines come here, which days they come here, when they come. This is not, cruise lines are not just going to come in and without our permission and without our invitation. So this is all under the city's control. The city can determine how many passengers they believe are acceptable in our city. So if you look at the actual jobs creation, they look at a baseline of actually the declining number of passengers and then increasing those back to a level that we're comfortable with. So that's why there's a range of job creation. And again, it's not a number we came up with. That's directly from their reconnaissance report.
Con, I'd like to know if the studies that have been done, where did you get your information, scientific information, that this is definitely going to harm our environment? That this is not on just how you feel, but scientific evidence that indeed these cruise ships have had a harmful effect on our environment.
We have a lot of dedicated people who are looking into giving us lots of valid, certified information. So every study that we put up is either an industry study, an Army Corps of Engineers study, a peer-reviewed scientific study, or something along that lines. It's not just, an editorial magazine from the Sun Sentinel or something. It's everything that we're putting up and we're claiming as a fact is either a peer-reviewed scientific study in the case of turbidity and the dredging effects in other areas that we could assimilate or see as reasonably similar to our own situation, as well as the processes that the Army Corps of Engineers go through. We have a lot of people who are looking at this, and I spend a lot of time reading the documents, as does Mark, and we go through them and we try to understand what exactly the Army Corps of Engineers process would be in this entire situation here.
Just a little follow-up. Has there been a specific research project, something that you can say specifically that has shown that the cruise ships have had a detrimental effect, the silt has had a detrimental effect on the coral? A specific research project?
There is a study on our site that is it's from about 2 years ago, and it cites Bermuda as an example, which is ecologically pretty similar to us, and it's the effect of cruise ships on coral, and it does not conclude that adult corals are immediately harmed by siltation caused by cruise ships, because that's very difficult to measure scientifically. We're talking about particles that are micrograms wide. But it was able to conclude conclusively that these corals were unable to propagate. That is, the little baby polyps were not able to attach themselves to a substrate, and they could directly attribute that to the traffic caused by cruise ships. So that's just one example. Again, you can follow up online if you want and spend 6 months reading all the documents that we've said, but it's all peer-reviewed scientific studies. And any scientist that works on coral will tell you that turbidity is not the way to keep coral healthy. And we do know that these ships cause silt plumes already. We'd be adding more ships causing more silt plumes, and that's not even counting the dredging effects that itself would have.
Well, Jenna just passed the buck here, but just for the record, I'd like to state that there's nothing authoritative ever in the Sun Sentinel.
Touche, point taken.
Paul, bring it home.
In a recent chamber ad, there was a claim that a yes vote and this channel widening study was important to enhance the enjoyment of our visitors. How does a study make our visitors happy?
That's an interesting question. Well, actually, as I said, Key West is one of the highest, or actually the highest rated cruise ship destination in the entire Caribbean. So obviously when people come here, they have a fantastic experience. And if we could make this a place that we could get, the higher end cruise lines, diversity in the types of cruise lines that we have, instead of right now, which because of our channel restrictions, we've now went to 60% Carnival, and we're looking at about 80% here pretty soon. as the Royal Caribbean and some of these other ships are rotated overseas. So if you're able to diversify and you can bring in different types of cruise lines, we're not dependent on just one or Carnival or whoever it may be in the future, that we can have some diversity. We can have diversity in the experience that our visitors have when they're here. We can have diversity for our locals. We can certainly have an economic impact for our locals. So it does matter. And as I said earlier, it impacts and drives our overall tourism economy. So we're all happy when tourism is good. It is our industry, guys. We as somebody mentioned earlier was, at some point in time it was sponging, and there's been cigars. It's been all kinds of different things, but it's tourism-based economy right now, and that's what we have. You can't just replace that with something else that you pull out of a hat without some research and figuring it out. And that's what the study is about. Well, nobody's saying we have to widen the channel. We're not to that point. We've got all kinds of opportunities to stop it if we don't want this to move forward. The Army Corps of Engineers is not sitting here waiting to dredge our channel, guys. There's hundreds of projects that the Corps can do. This is something we would ask from the Corps. They're not asking us to do it. So there's all kinds of opportunities that we can stop it. But I think first and foremost, to answer your question, is it allows us our visitors to have a better guest experience because they have diversity. They can come to Key West when they want to come on a cruise ship, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing for Key West. It's free advertising for the city every time somebody walks off of those ships.
Okay, Richard's got another last
question.
Burning in his soul.
It is. Royal Caribbean just left us for their own island. The more they can keep, Carnival.
Royal Caribbean's island.
Royal Caribbean's island, that's correct.
Who's asking this question?
I don't have all my facts, but I do know that they make money when they go to their own island. They don't make as much money when they come here. What, if any, guarantee have the cruise ships made you if we do dredge this channel, widen this channel, that they indeed will come here? And if we are the most desirable place to come in the Caribbean, why has Carnival chosen to go to their own island? It's because...
No, let them answer.
I'll let you answer.
First of all, Carnival has not abandoned Key West. There's still 60% of our business. There's no plan that is on the table to take all of Carnival cruise ships to a private island. There are all kinds of different locations that cruise lines like to visit. They don't want to just come to the same spot every time. They go to different places in the Caribbean. But as I said, Key West is their highest rated destination. So it depends on what the demand is. And if the people say, I want to come to Key West, then that's a favorable and desirable place for them to be. Not everybody wants to go to a private island. It's not for everybody. And when they go to private islands, they don't just go to a private island and sit there for 2 or 3 days. They actually go to the island for 1 day and then they go somewhere else. So Key West has been a beneficiary of that. The Royal Caribbean actually has a 4 or 5 day trip where they come to Key West and then they go to a private island and they go to Nassau and they do different things. So to say that it's just they're just going to take all of their business to a private island, that's not the industry trend. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they're telling us they want to do. The cruise lines want to be in Key West. They want this to happen because it is a favorable destination for them. So that I don't think that's ever going to be the case that they're going to abandon Key West.
Thank you, guys. That concludes tonight. You have to ask him privately. So I'm sure everybody's welcome to hang around. The first person at the bar, please get me a glass of wine.